Hello everyone, Namaste. This is Dr. Mandar Bedekar from Freedom from Diabetes. We are having a series of educational videos, and so far we have discussed, though in brief, the Ayurvedic aspect about diabetes. You can quickly recollect or would like to rewatch the video and you will realize that, so to say, Ayurveda doesn't recognize diabetes as a typical sugar disease, unlike the Western medicine. However, Ayurveda recognizes the role of sweet food consumption and many other causative factors. Now, in this series of educational videos, we will be discussing mainly the food items in Ayurvedic perspective, simply because food items, they are one of the major causes of this disease. If you quickly classify the food items in typical Indian traditional diet pattern, you will realize that there are 3 or 4 major groups needed to be discussed. First is, of course, cereals and grains. Second is dal items, pulses and beans, you can say. Third is vegetables of different kinds. And fourth is the spices. Indians are known for use of spices. Out of these 4 major food groups, today in this particular video, we will have a quick overlook about the cereals and grains. Now, why cereals and grains to start with? There are 2 reasons. First is, you can say, India specific, because the traditional Indian diet, irrespective of the caste and religion and the community and the geographical area, in general, the traditional Indian diet, we can say the staple for Indians is rice and roti or various kinds of similar recipes. It may be roti, it may be chapati in some other areas, it may be bhakri in Maharashtra, or it may be various kinds of parathas in the northern part of Indian belt. But there is no doubt that cereals and grains, they form a major portion of traditional Indian diet. So this is the reason today why we will be discussing cereals and grains. Second reason will be better explained based on the modern Western science. According to a study, around 70 to 80% of calories we consume, they come from the cereals and grains groups. So obviously, they play a major role in an individual's health. So this is why we will now have a quick overlook about cereals and grains from Ayurvedic perspective. Now today, because of the modernization, globalization and easy access to information after internet availability, everyone knows the concepts of calories, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, etc. So if you quickly try to relate to the calorific value, which is not an Ayurvedic perspective, you will realize that, surprisingly enough, most of the cereals and grains that we know or we the Indians eat, they are in the range of around 350 calories we get from 100 grams of that particular grain. For example, rice, some varieties of rice, 350 calories, exactly 350 calories we get out of 100 grams. Jowar is a little less, wheat is a little more, I guess 356 or something, and bajra is a little more, 361. But for convenience, we can say that most of the cereals and grains the Indians have been traditionally using, they are around the range of 350 to say 356, 358 calories per 100 grams. But this is just the modern Western aspect of it. As you already know, Ayurveda has a totally different perspective. So Ayurveda considers these cereals and grains in different attributes, or you can say qualities for easier understanding. Ayurveda says that it depends on the quality that particular cereal or grain has, that how it will affect the body. So in this video, in the next few minutes to come, we will be discussing qualities or attributes the cereals and grains have. But before that, let me quickly enlist the cereals and grains which we are about to discuss now. I would like to discuss 8 major cereals and grains today. Of course, the rice, wheat, jowar, bajra, oats, barley, corn, and ragi to end with. So these 8 cereals and grains, because they are frequently consumed by Indians, we will be discussing today. Out of them, we will focus mainly on the 3 or 4 criteria of all these cereals and grain, and will end up with discussing how they affect individual health. May it be a diabetic person or it may not have diabetes, he or she, doesn't matter. To start with, we must know which grain is easy to digest and which grain is heavier to digest. In Sanskrit or in Ayurvedic technical terminology, they are respectively called as Laghu and Guru. Laghu is light for digestion, Guru is heavy for digestion or difficult for digestion. We will also discuss which grain is drying us, that means ruksha in Ayurvedic terminology, and which grain is opposite of that, not dry, anxious to be precise. Then we will obviously discuss one of the most touchy concerns of all the diabetics, and that is constipation. So we will have a quick overlook about which grain has which effect on constipation or easy defecation. And lastly, which will be a very technical discussion though, so I will not go into the details, but lastly we will have a quick overlook about which grains increase which of the doshas in the body, vata, pitta or kapha. So let us start with the first duo of qualities, attributes, Laghu and Guru, light and heavy to digest. Let me remind you, everyone knows actually, but let me remind you that diabetes in modern Western perspective is a metabolic disorder. So each and every diabetic person must be concerned, deeply concerned and careful about the status of digestion. And for that matter, the knowledge about heaviness and easiness, Laghu and Guru, quality of that grain matters a lot. Let us quickly add to our knowledge bank that out of the 8 grains I referred to start this video with, out of those 8 grains, wheat is notably heavy to digest. I repeat, wheat is notably heavy to digest. So any person who has digestive concerns, not having enough appetite, has experienced stickiness here and there, for example in the mouth cavity, on the tongue, etc., should be careful about the use of wheat. In turn, they can try shifting to other grains like jowar, bajra, etc. So this is about the heaviness of the wheat as a grain. Out of the other grains, precisely bajra is Laghu. So those who have digestive concerns can think about bajra for this concern, and rice, Indians need not be specifically informed that, because India has been a rice eating community, but rice in comparison with wheat is quite easy to digest. So based on each one's digestive capacities, one can decide to go for grain. The second important criterion to decide the cereal and grain should be whether it is drying or it is not dry. And I guess this will be clinically a very important discussion. Why? Because some of the diabetics, they specifically observe dryness. It may be dryness of the hair, it may be dryness in the eyes, or it may be dryness in the skin. And a few of them, they can even experience cracking of the soles of the feet or elsewhere in the body. That is the, you can say, the extreme of dryness. So those who are suffering from any kind of dryness should obviously avoid drying type of cereals and grains. Jowar, bajra, oats, barley and corn, all are drying cereals and grains. Particularly those who are eating barley or corn, they must be informed that these 2 grains can dry the intestines from inside, and anyone having what are colloquially called as gas problems, flatulence, bloating, balloon belly, burping, everything included. So those who are having any kind of gas concerns, they should be really careful with barley and corn, because they further dry up the intestines. Jowar also is dry, so one should be careful with jowar usage if they have any dryness concern. On the other hand, wheat is unctuous. Unctuous is a scientific word. It can be wrongly translated as oily. So those who have any stickiness concern, stickiness on the tongue, white coating on the tongue, etc., they should be careful about usage of wheat, and in turn they should shift to the opposite group, that is the dry cereals and grains. The third concern, and I guess that's one of the very worried about thing of most of the diabetics, particularly the senior citizens, is whether that particular grain is making me constipated. Let me tell you, constipation is quite a common problem today, and constipation of diabetics is really a concern. So they should know which grain helps and which grain should be avoided. Maybe the next point which I am going to share will be a big surprise. Rice is actually mild constipating in nature. I'll repeat because it's a big surprise for Indians, the rice eating community. But let me tell you that rice is specifically mentioned as having a tendency to constipate, though it's a mild constipating, but yes, it is constipating. So those who are having constipation, chronic constipation, or those who have developed it recently but are really concerned about it, they should rethink about usage of rice, and they should think about other options like, for example, wheat, which is not constipating. Corn, for example, is another grain which can really constipate a person. So those who are constipated should really be careful with using rice and corn. Of course, the final decision should be taken in discussion with their individual doctors or the allotted diet experts, or getting more and more information about it. This is just a directive video. This is not a decisive statement that one should use wheat or one should use corn. Lastly, because Ayurveda believes in the Tridosha theory, the Vata, Pitta and Kapha theory, and they are playing a key role in individual health and even the disease happenings. So one should quickly know which grains are affecting which doshas. For example, rice is known to increase a bit of Vata dosha in the tummy. So again, those who are suffering from various Vata problems like burping, flatulence, balloon belly, or some more complicated Vata problems should consult their diet experts or their individual doctors to finally decide about whether they should continue with rice eating or they should shift to the wheat, because wheat will not increase their Vata dosha. Those who have a known history of hyperacidity or ulcers, they should try avoiding bajra, simply because bajra is hot by potency and it can increase the pitta dosha of that particular person. So this is a brief overview about the cereals and grains generally used in the traditional Indian diet. As I have already said, after listening to this video, I repeat, this is a directive video. Once you know your dosha dominance, once you know which problem is precisely bothering you, may it be constipation or dryness or stickiness, accordingly you can get in touch with your diet experts or your individual doctors, and you can choose a better grain to have better health. So with this, we come to the end of this particular video. In the same serial of videos, in the videos to come, we will be sequentially discussing dal items, pulses and beans. Then we will be discussing the commonly available vegetables, and we will end up this series by discussing the spices, use of spices by diabetics. So with this I conclude. Namaste. Thank you all.